All right. We should be all good to go. So, how you doing today?
I'm good, and you?
I'm not too bad.
Are we really good?
I was about to say, yeah, I'm stable. Stable and stressed seems to be the constant feeling that I'm in lately.
I mean, after the last 48 hours, it's been pretty exciting out there, so.
They find a way to keep it exciting, if that's the right word. Yeah, I talked a ton about the whole SignalGate thing when we were on the live stream with the Sons of Liberty and then with my dad. That wasn't something that I was going to make a video about until I started hearing people on the other side of the aisle's reaction to it, parroting the exact same thing that the administration was parroting, which is whether it was, just completely ignoring it, lying about it, or pretending that it wasn't a big deal at all, which is absolutely insane. So I guess I'll get your opinions on it.
Well, if you get a chance, go to my Substack, and you'll actually see a memorandum that I wrote. Given my background, I actually worked in the War Plans Division at the Pentagon. So War Plans is my bailiwick. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a memorandum as if I had been tasked to look at the situation and provide a update to the leadership. And it was kind of interesting. I got a couple of people like, "Hey, yeah, Chuck, if you sent that up the chain of command right now, you'd be out on your ass by tomorrow morning."
Mm-hmm. My dad was saying, he was like, I've seen people, generals who have lost their jobs just for like posting a video of a plane taking off on an aircraft carrier. And he's like, but because it's this administration, it's somebody at the very top, and we know how this administration operates, that nobody is going to face the proper consequences for this.
No, and the thing that bothers me the most is we can get into the whole discussion of whether or not the information is classified, who the classification authority is. Mm-hmm. We could have that long discussion. But the thing that concerns me the most is, number one, you can tell that Hegseth and the rest, they feel like the rules don't apply to them. The law doesn't apply to them. Mm-hmm. And they're the arbiter of everything. The second thing is, this is what they got caught doing. Mm-hmm. What is all the stuff that they're doing that are not being caught doing?
Right.
That's the part that I think is the most chilling is like, okay, so you used it for this. What else are you using it for?
Do you think that it is just, incompetence and they're trying to scramble to cover up that incompetence? Or do you think that them using Signal is purposeful to circumvent official channels for whatever reasons?
I'm going to go with the second part.
Okay.
That it's a circumvent. However, we can have a great discussion on whether or not they're trying to get around the Federalist Record Act. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's it. The folks on the left are going to scream that's what they're trying to do, but I just don't think that's what it is. Mm-hmm. As somebody who's worked in the IC, the intelligence community, and when I say I worked in it for 20 years. A long time. Mm-hmm. If you were at the State Department and I was at the Department of Defense and we needed to talk in a secure manner across email or something, it is monumentally a pain in the ass. The systems don't talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And so I think that they're using Signal purely for convenience. Gotcha. And so it's like, and honestly, I like Signal because if you're going to do text messaging, the little text messaging we do on our iPhones, it's a postcard, right? Mm-hmm. WhatsApp was at least an envelope, right? Mm-hmm. But if somebody saw WhatsApp, they can still open it up and they can see it. Mm-hmm. Signal at least has some encryption to it. Mm-hmm. It is actually a great product for unclassified information for you and I to share whatever, giving us some level of expectation of privacy.
Unclassified being the operative word, right?
Right. Well, so that's the thing, and that's I heard the director of the NSA said something about, they have it installed on our computers. They have it installed on their unclassified desktop computers. Mm-hmm. That unclassified desktop computer isn't even remotely close to being on the on SIPRNet, the secret, or on JWIX or Top Secret. It's not like you go onto your laptop and hit Control Alt, and all of a sudden you flip over to a different system. You have to go to a completely different system. I mean, it's a completely different computer. They do not mix. They don't come close together. Mm-hmm. So saying, that we've got Signal on our PCs, yeah, that might be. And for just general unclassified things that don't have to go underneath the Federal Records Act, it's fantastic. Yeah. Hey, Chance, you want to go to lunch? Mm-hmm. That doesn't have to be written down.
Right.
So Signal in itself is a really good app, and it's great for communications. We're in the 21st century, right? If we were to go back to, I hate to say it, if we go back to President Biden, he's probably not texting much. Mm-hmm. We go back to earlier Bush, probably not texting much. You and I communicate by text almost every day. Mm-hmm. Oh, I guarantee we do it every day. Mm-hmm. So that is the communication methodology of the 21st century, of today. So they were doing it for convenience.
Right.
Now, Hegseth did, he received the information, and that information came from Central Command. It came from CENTCOM. That operation wasn't being run out of the Pentagon. That operation was being run out of CENTCOM, executed by the USS Truman. That's why he was getting situational updates. Mm-hmm. He wasn't in the loop. That's why you saw the first line was like, "Hey, I heard from CENTCOM that we're a go." Okay, it didn't say that the SecDef told CENTCOM we're a go. It said CENTCOM told the SecDef we're a go. Right? Mm-hmm. So he's actually received that information either on a computer system, and it parenthetically in front of it probably had a TS or an S, and then here's the line. And all he's done is sit there and read on the screen, and he's typed it into Signal on his phone and transmitted it. And he has stripped the classification off of that message. Mm-hmm. And he's not the originating classification authority. Mm-hmm. CENTCOM is. Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah, and then the fact that the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic was part of the communication, that's even right. More of a... How does something like that even happen? Like, how does... Michael Waltz was the one who added him to the chat. How he was added to that chat doesn't make any sense.
So I've heard on March 11th, Goldberg received a Signal request to join Michael Waltz, and Goldberg was like, "Yeah, that's the same name as is this the Michael Waltz?" And he's like, "I assumed it did." And he thought maybe there was going to be some type of transparency, some type of reaching out and talking about other type of activities.
Was that a request for a contact or a request in that specific group message? Do you know?
I bet you, I would say, because I use Signal, I would say that was a request for contact. Mm-hmm. So all that was happening was Waltz was sending a message to Goldberg saying, "Hey, let's be friends on Signal," right? And so Goldberg, thinking that it is Michael Waltz, so he accepts.
Right.
Then what happened? Later on, when they set up the chat group, Waltz has gone into his phone, into Signal, pulled up the directory. He claims that he makes two claims. Mm-hmm. The first claim is that he claims that he had Waltz's number assigned to a different name. That was one. And then there was another claim that it was something about, well, maybe like the Atlantic did something. And now they're going to have Elon Musk and his people tracking down the technology. I'm like, why do you think that is better?
Right.
Why do you think the Atlantic hacking into Signal to get into your chat group is better? If the Atlantic can do it, I don't know, maybe the Chinese, maybe the Russians, I don't know.
Right.
So Waltz just fat-fingered it.
I saw Michael Waltz took some form of responsibility, but I don't think that taking of responsibility is actually going to go anywhere when they're having Elon Musk come in to investigate, and now they're admonishing Jeffrey Goldberg, who has nothing to do with this other than just being, involuntarily involved in it.
So him taking responsibility is the equivalent of this in my eyes. Mm-hmm. When I was a lieutenant colonel and I was in charge of troops, so there's two terms. One is responsible and one's accountable. Responsible means that you have a direct requirement to do something. Mm-hmm. Accountable means that you're accountable for something being done that you're not necessarily responsible for. However, in our modern day screw up of the English language, we use those intertwined.
Right.
All he was saying was that because something, I'm not responsible, I'm just responsible.
Right.
Because, it would be like a president saying that he's responsible for anything that happens, mm-hmm. all the way down to the lowest level because I'm the man, so therefore I'm responsible. Mm-hmm. And that's the way that I took his I'm responsible. It wasn't even I'm accountable. It was just,
it's very hollow.
I'm at the top of the food chain, so I'll take responsibility for this. Mm-hmm. But
what actions are being taken for people to face the proper consequences and to make sure that it doesn't happen again?
So he's not going to fall on the sword. Mm-hmm. He's going to throw Jeffrey Goldberg on the sword.
Right, which is just absolutely horrible. And I heard a lot of people talking about, there's so much noise on social media, so many people peddling theories and everything, but regardless of the theories of whether it was purposeful or not, they're going to use this opportunity to try to seed further doubt in the press, in the media, and further consolidate their own power into whatever state media that they're going to try to prop up. We see it in them kicking out the Associated Press and them trying to take funding away from PBS and NPR. And so many ways they're trying to silence any type of dissent. It's scary that the way that they're approaching this is to further admonish the press that really has nothing to do with this.
I worked in strategic communications for a long time. Mm-hmm. If I was sitting in the White House right now and they told me, Chuck, we need for you to take care of it, this is the two things that I would do on the MAGA side. Mm-hmm. Number one is I want to find the smallest bit of something that's wrong, and I want to amplify that. That is what they did when they were talking about war plans versus attack plans. Like I said, I worked in war plans division. A war plan is 1,000-page document. 1,000-page document was not being transmitted across. Yeah. However, because Jeffrey Goldberg said that, and I got into a discussion with a good friend of mine on whether or not I should hold Goldberg to a standard where he ought to be using the appropriate military terms or not. That's irrelevant. Right. But because he used war plan, that gave them that one little item that they could continue to amplify to such a point that they're not willing to talk about anything else. Right. If you listen to them, every time they're going to say, well, there wasn't a war plan. There wasn't a war plan. This wasn't a war plan. And so that's number one is find something that you can amplify, distract, and deflect. The second thing is attack and, make counter accusations. Deny, make counter accusations, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what they're doing on Goldberg is they're going after him and saying that he is a horrible journalist, that, the Atlantic is a failing. You can hear Trump. Everything he says about it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the second thing. So what's going to happen is the communication silos that the MAGA party's in, they're going to hear two things. Number one, that Jeffrey Goldberg was lying about what was transmitted. Mm-hmm. And number two, that he is a far left Trump-hating journalist. Right. And that's going to shut that entire conversation completely down.
In regular world, not living in the Twilight Zone, this would be an egregious error that would beg for some consequences and wouldn't be able to be spun so hard as the Trump administration always spins things. So because of that fact, I was like, this is more noise that I wasn't going to talk about. Meanwhile, it's distracting from a lot of the things that are happening within the country, which I do want to talk about, the destruction of our freedom of speech, really, with a lot of these students in Colombia that are being imprisoned, having their visas revoked, threatened deportation for speaking out, for being a part of pro-Palestinian protests, being labeled as terrorists when all they've really done is exercise their freedom of speech as legal U.S. residents. And now we have I don't know if you saw, the students from Tufts University had her visa revoked just for taking place in pro-Palestinian protests. And they use a lot of inflammatory rhetoric to say, hey, this person is pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist. They're one of the leaders of the organization. And everyone who knows her is coming out and saying, like, she's not even a leader of the protest. She's just involved. And I think it said that she wrote like an opinion piece or something like that. It seems like every single day we're having those rights being attacked and more people being attacked just based on, their beliefs and what they have to say.
Yeah. So one thing real quick before we transition, you can tell that it was getting to the point that it was bothering Trump. That's why yesterday Trump announced the 25% tariff on vehicles. It was everywhere. It was basically to change the news loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's two parts to what you've brought up that is so concerning to me. It's not just the First Amendment issue. It's also the individuals who are showing up for their asylum appointments and being rounded up and sent to El Salvador.
Right. Yeah.
But and the only reason why I bring that up is I very easily can see this linking to where they round up somebody for First Amendment issues and they find themselves on a flight to El Salvador.
Right. I mean, the deal that he made with the El Salvadorian president, it included not only, U.S. residents and visa holders,
US
but
citizens.
American citizens. Yeah, that's very concerning.
Yeah. So what I don't have a good feeling for is this because it was a pro-Palestinian, which means that you have to be anti-Israel in the Trump administration's view, or is this simply because it's an anti-Trump something?
Right.
I can easily see this parlaying straight into a same type of an issue with Black Lives Matter or Lafayette Plaza type of thing. However, rounding up U.S. citizens or rounding up, permanent residents and or revoking visas for the purposes of deportation, I can't think of anything more un-American than that.
Right.
My other concern with that is, we have a current set of laws on how you go from being arrested for whatever through the deportation court system, through the immigration court system,
right,
to being deported. And the Trump administration is using laws that have not been tested by the courts to basically skip that immigration court.
Right.
And that is terrifying.
When you're talking about laws, you're talking about the Alien Enemies Act, and which, when they were used during wartime.
And how they were used in war. I mean, they were used to round up Japanese Americans, German Americans, to put Japanese Americans in internment camps.
Right. Yeah, but now we're sending people to El Salvador to basically be in torturous, inhumane conditions, and they're people with no criminal records who have been sent there. We have innocent people who are legal U.S. residents at the time being taken to a prison camp with no due process at all, just in line with the students that are being arrested as well. They're ignoring federal courts. That's the thing that I try to focus a lot of my attention on, because that's what scares me the most. That's what seems like the slipperiest of slopes to what we have going on in this country.
So I'm going to scare you.
Oh, jeez.
So here's my tin hat theory.
Okay. Sounds good. I love those.
My tin hat theory is this. All right. So my family's from West Virginia, and they are MAGA supporters. And this is what they heard regarding El Salvador. Mm-hmm. They heard that these were Venezuelan gang members in a prison, mm-hmm. who were then taken and deported to a prison in El Salvador, and that if we kept them in the United States, it'd be almost $30 million per person to keep them in prison for life, mm-hmm. where we're getting a deal, and it's only going to cost the United States $6 million to imprison them in El Salvador. Mm-hmm. So that was the story they heard. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, you and I, if we were having a discussion and we said, hey, these are Venezuelan gang members who've already gone through the court system and are currently imprisoned in the United States, Venezuela won't take them, so we're just shipping them to El Salvador, mm-hmm. in prison. I mean, would we really even care about that?
You wouldn't bat an eye. Yeah.
Wouldn't bat an eye.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think this was a stress test. It was to see how much could Trump get away with,
right,
when it comes to the court systems. This is a Stephen Miller Project 2025 stress test, mm-hmm. on the MAGA supporters, the court system, and the Constitution.
And it's sad to see, because they don't see the full scope of everything and see that there was legal U.S. residents who were sent over there. I mean, we don't have any evidence of their gang involvement. They were all profiled. A lot of their families have reached out and said that they were profiled. Right. There was somebody who was seeking sanctuary, like we said, had a court date and everything, was profiled for their tattoos, which meant nothing in line with being in a Venezuelan gang, and somebody that said that they were a member of the LGBTQ community who was literally leaving Venezuela to flee from the threat of gang violence because they were a member of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, so the problem that we've got is we've got members of the Trump administration, I believe DHS. She was on the news and she was like, hey, no, ICE has thoroughly vetted every one of these. And if you support the Trump administration and a Trump administration official is telling you they thoroughly vetted it, are you going to listen to a left-wing wacko like myself? Lord, no.
That's all they have to say. They just have to, present it without any information, just tell them the right things, and they'll, take it hook, line, and sinker. Because they want to as well. They want to take it.
Well, that's the best point, is that if it plays into their narrative, then, why try to find fact if your narrative is supported?
Right.
When your concern is how much is it going to cost to be, if your concern is you and, your son have to follow each other in cars to go to Kroger's on Tuesday and pull one car in and fill it up, pull the next car in and fill it up all on the same ticket because you can get a discount. Mm-hmm. If that's your concern, who the hell cares what happens to Venezuelan gang members?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to sound like callous.
Right, but I mean, that's the thinking that they come from. And I think that's, also part of the slippery slope. We see it throughout history. The way that this works is by people being apathetic, looking the other way. It's 1939 Germany. It's the first they came for poem that tells us that this is what happens. They come for the people that have been admonished. They've been demonized by those in power as the undesirables, and then after that they start coming for the journalists, the people who speak out against the atrocities happening, and before you know it, they're at your doorstep and you have no more rights to work against them. And how do we, I keep asking everyone that I talk to this question, how do we combat that? How do we, because we can like-minded people like you and me can have conversations about this all the live long day. But how do we reach the masses? Even the people, I'm not talking about, the cult members. I'm talking about the apathetic people who can care, but are so involved in their own lives that they don't have or think they don't have time to care, or just aren't exposed to it. How do we reach those people and tell them, hey, at the end of the day, even if you don't think this affects you, this does affect you in the very fabric of the democracy in this country that we live in?
So one of the things I think where the Democratic Party screwed up, kind of failed,
right,
is our form of democracy today works well for the donor class, for the upper class, for that level.
Right.
And that form of democracy works well for them. It doesn't work well for everyone.
Right.
And when Harris ran, she ran on status quo democracy. So her campaign was all about maintaining that status quo for the Democrats it worked for.
Right.
Trump ran on status quo for the MAGA party, and that status quo for them was enriching the donor class, because everybody believes in trickle down economics, and right, and
contrary
then
to the evidence.
yeah. Even though economists are like, no, that doesn't work, but they still believe it. And then the second thing is that they did not agree with the Democrat status quo vision.
Right. Yeah. And that's something I can understand,
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So to answer your question is, we need to determine a democracy for the 21st century. When the MAGA party talks about the country, we need to talk about the people.
Right.
And we need to come up with our Building of America 2029 plan.
Right.
And if the Democrats come up with that plan, then that's the way you're going to connect with the people. And it's going to have to start with the midterms. And, democracy today is lost. We have to make a decision on whether or not we want to build a democracy for 2029.
Right. And I think that, a lot of people who are in that MAGA camp, or not even the staunch supporters, the people who voted for him this time for economic reasons and because of the things that he promised, which, he is not, he doesn't care about the people. He is self-interested. And then the people in his scope, they are also self-interested, and they prioritize profit over people, and that needs to shift. What we need to do is prioritize people over profit. I mean, everybody complains about the unchecked capitalism that we have, and that's what leads to the fascism that we're seeing right now. We need a balance of capitalism and socialism to make the world in our country a more equitable place for everybody. But what did they do as soon as they came in? They started stripping away all the socialism that was there. And so we're leaving, people out to dry, the actual people, the working class that deserve rights, just to cater to the billionaires that already have everything and that are consolidating or continuing to consolidate wealth and power, and now privatizing all of our systems. And they're going to need to use force to maintain that consolidation of wealth and power.
Yeah. So I use the term democratic capitalism with guardrails is what I kind of, the economic system. You lost me with socialism because I'm not into socialism.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I get that, because if you
I am the
fall
social
into
safety net.
communism, but there is a balance that needs to be had between, the unchecked capitalism we have, and then helping, out the general public with social programs, I think.
Right. Social program is not socialism.
Right.
Socialism is when the government actually owns the means of production.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily want every hospital owned by the government. I don't want, so in economics, there's a term, it's called public goods.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very specific because, it can't be competitive and it has blah, blah, blah. What I use as a term is essential services. Mm-hmm. And I do think there is essential services that we need to look at for a democracy of the 21st century. So, for instance, like, should we really have electric companies, mm-hmm. or should there be allowed a monopoly when it comes to electricity because of the way it crosses boundaries? And should we really be at the point that we all pay electric bills? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the type of things, cybersecurity, when you're protecting data systems, which are the systems that keep the grid up. I don't want to see cybersecurity kicked down to the states, because now you're going to have states that are fortified, and you have states that are very weak. Mm-hmm. And those weak states will become soft targets. Mm-hmm. And those soft targets will be the places where we increase our income inequality, because they're the ones that's actually getting their wealth removed because they're being targeted from someplace else. Mm-hmm. So I don't really use the term socialism, right, but I do like using the term social safety nets, mm-hmm. and I do think we absolutely need to do that. As far as companies prioritizing profits over people, I don't know how we deal with that. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, when you look at the top 10 people in the United States with the most wealth, the Walton family has 5 of the 10. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you look at like a Walmart, and I just don't know. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of a $20 an hour minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And for everybody who starts saying, oh, it's going to cause $18 Big Macs. No, California did it a couple of years ago, and there's all kinds of great studies that have come out that say, no, it actually caused employees to stay longer, mm-hmm. which decreased costs mm-hmm. of trying to hire a new employee and that type of stuff. Seattle, I think California went to 15, Seattle went to 20. I do think that we need to look at that. Back to your point, though, what I don't necessarily see the wealth being brought together in the top 3% mm-hmm. as the major issue. Mm-hmm. I kind of do, but I don't. What I think the major issue is income inequality. Okay. It's going down to, that, basic kind of level. Mm-hmm. I think when you go into a city, and like Chicago right now is under fire about all the crime and so forth. If you look, that's one of the greatest cities of income inequality. I don't think people, this is just my cardiac knowledge, the stuff I believe true to my heart, but I really don't have any data on. Mm-hmm. I don't think that people grow up to want to be drug dealers. Yeah,
I'm a firm believer in that as well.
And it's not an easy job. So it's not like, people can't say that being a drug dealer is just as like this easy street job. It's not. Yeah. It's high risk. Mm-hmm. I mean, people would not generally want to do that if other opportunities are available.
Yeah, nobody aspires to be that, but the opportunities, aren't there. And there's a whole multitude of reasons why somebody would get into that life. And that's indicative of larger problems within the system. And I do believe the wealth inequality problem, where do you see the genesis of that? Why do you think that problem just gets bigger over time?
Right. So I'm going to use 2 different terms, mm-hmm. wealth inequality and income inequality. Mm-hmm. So wealth inequality is that generational wealth. That is right. the money that your family has been able to accumulate through property, through all kinds of stuff. That's the wealth side of the house. Right. And most families do not have that inheritance that they can give to the next generation. Right. Right. Income inequality is simply that, that job that you have, It's women getting 80 cents for every dollar a man makes. It's how much does a person, I mean, there was a study done a couple of years ago, and I think they used Indeed or LinkedIn, one of the two, and they took 10,000 applications, and they made half the applications using names that you would traditionally associate with African Americans. And they used the other half was names that you would normally associate with people who look like me. And resumes that went out with people who look like me got like an 80% callback. The people who had traditional type of names, or even might say non-traditional type of names, but the ones that are used in the African American community, they had a significantly less callback, even though the resumes were identical.
Right.
So, number one, we need to close the gap on that income inequality, and we need to set up a way of getting families wealth, generational wealth.
Right. Do you think that there is a line between the wealth inequality and the income inequality? Do you think that the wealth inequality, that has been compounded, the people who own the companies, the people that own the monopolies, that have hoarded all of this wealth, they perpetuate the income inequality?
Well, I don't even. I'm going to push back a little bit on hoarding the wealth.
Okay.
Just because, look at there's a great video you can watch, and it shows from 1980 to 2025. You got to look it up. It shows individuals, the wealthiest individuals, right? And what's funny is you'll see Bill Gates, and Bill Gates comes up, and Bill Gates hits like 80 billion, right? And then all of a sudden, he stays at 80 billion. Every year, he's still at 80 billion. Then all of a sudden, there's this guy named Elon Musk who comes up and then goes all the way across. And I don't necessarily want to sound like that I want to take somebody's money that they've earned or inherited and give it to others. I don't want to be that.
I have no problem being that.
Yeah, well, see,
I'm a big believer in, taxing wealth and wealth cap, and I believe that we should go back to, before Reagan era economics and tax wealth at 90% after a certain point. But I know that's not a popular opinion.
No, because so this is what's funny. In your mind, that's okay. In my mind, it's bad because you're going to be taxing me.
But I feel like there is a certain point. There could be, a tiered system and everything, and that just comes from me. Like I haven't
fair taxation. I'm all on fair taxation. And I would love to, and I don't know the answer to this one. I'm sure there's brilliant economists out there who can do that. I would love to see a system that helps with families building that generational wealth. I mean, almost like, I don't know, let's do something crazy stupid. When a child is born, the federal government takes $10,000 and puts it into a bank account in the child's name, and the child can't touch it until they're 30. Can you imagine what that $10,000 would be worth in 30 years, compounded interest?
Right.
It's interesting when you look at military retirements. Military retirements, when I'm in the military, when a person's in the military, when you get paid, so let's say for every dollar, they take, I think it's 20 cents, or it used to be. I don't know the numbers now, but they would take 20 cents and they'd put it into an account for when you retire. And every time you get a paycheck, they put that more money in that account. And then once you retire, that's the money they have to pay for your retirement, right? Because they pre-invested to do that. Can you imagine what would happen if the United States just put, I don't know, like I said, $10,000 for a person, and if the person doesn't make it to 30, it just rolls back into another account. I mean, it just goes
I love that. Yeah.
And then at 30 years old, they actually would have a seed of money that they would be able to use.
Right.
And when you do something like that, now you're starting to provide individuals with wealth And once individuals have wealth, then you have that thing called generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And compounding interest makes those numbers absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm. I think, I mean, that does sound great. It's just that for so long, those who have been in power, they are not interested in providing wealth. I feel like there is a certain point that people get to, and like I said, prioritizing profit over people, they are also apathetic towards other people. So like, even if you and I disagree on how to fix wealth inequality or income inequality, those are conversations that need to be had. And I always preface, like, I do not have the answers. I am not an economist. I just have what I believe and would like to have those conversations with people who have a better know-how of how to put those things into practice. But those are not the conversations that are being had at the highest levels. And that's something that I feel like really needs to change. We need to change the narrative over what's really important and what will actually fix the inequality in this country. And that's not the conversation, obviously, that's being had in this administration right now.
Oh no!
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to allow this administration. It's the one that's not in any administration.
Yeah,
because I'm going to
very true.
I'm going to go back to my Democrat status quo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. They don't care either.
No.
That's the thing, is they dangle social victories or little civil rights victories, that things that have to constantly be fought for to uphold, with all of these concessions and the Democratic Party moving closer to the center and playing the exact same game in Congress that the Republicans are playing. So yeah, there needs to be and a complete upheaval in the way of thinking when it comes to the government and the people that are in power.
I wrote a paper a couple months ago about white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I point out there is that I'm from West Virginia. Okay, I grew up poor.
Mm-hmm.
So I recognize that I have white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think is a stumbling block is that we have this concept in the United States that if you just worked hard, if you just pulled your bootstraps and you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do, and I'm not going to take complete credit for this.
Mm-hmm.
There's an economist, Jeffrey Sachs, and Dr. Sachs has spent a lot of time working development in Africa. Mm-hmm. And I actually got a chance to talk to him. We talk about climbing the ladder of success. We're making the assumption that the lowest rung is reachable by everyone. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. Mm-hmm. My rung was probably a little higher than your rung was, mm-hmm. because your father set you up for success. Mm-hmm. And it's not that my father didn't set me up for success. I grew up in the 1970s in a state in which the steel mills were on strike all the time. Mm-hmm. So the Navy helped me get to that first rung. Now, once I got there, I went straight up the damn ladder. But getting to that first rung. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to look at, is we have to look across the United States, our society, and find out where is that first rung. Mm-hmm. Let's make sure that first rung is reachable, mm-hmm. so that a person can climb that ladder. Right.
Those are the conversations that need to be had. Those are the things that we need great minds working to mitigate. Let's hope that people can start focusing on that problem instead of a lot of these social issues that really have no basis in a lot of people's lives. Let the people who it affects fight for it and stop trying to get in the way of that fight while working on the real problems that cause the inequality in this nation.
I have friends in the trans community, so what I'm about ready to say, I'm not demeaning anything to them,
Mm-hmm.
because I do think that their struggles are just monumental.
Right.
However, look at the amount of time, energy, resources that both the left and the right
Mm-hmm.
put into approximately 100 high school students
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not they could participate in sport.
Right. Yep. It's a dumb argument. It's like, why are we so focused on that? And
Could you imagine the economic solutions we could have come up with
Mm-hmm.
with that much vigor and interest and passion and resources?
Yep.
But instead, we just waited for a bigoted president to come in and say that this is the way he thinks.
And a lot of those economic problems, they'll quell a lot of the divisiveness and discourse that we are facing right now. So hopefully we can get to that point, but there are a lot of there's a lot.
You heard me say it.
Yeah.
I believe that the most monumental threat, the problem that we have, is income inequality, and we've got to figure that one out.
Mm-hmm.
We figure out income inequality, a lot of these other problems just go away.
Right. Yep. I agree. There's a long road ahead of us, though. So I wrapping up here, I would like you to be able to, plug anything that you got going on.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Substack, thechuckkyleshow.substack.com. One of the interesting projects that I'm actually doing, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, is I'm writing a plan for 2029.
Awesome. I love to hear that.
So I'm not going to call it Project 2029 because Project 2025 has...
It's got a little stink on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because I've had people give me recommendations of what to call it, and I've heard him. I've been told, hey, it ought to be rebuilding and this type of stuff. And the thing of it is, our form of democracy has always worked for somebody that looks like me,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's always worked for women. I don't think it's always worked for minorities.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to rebuild. I don't want to make America great again, because that's going to a time in which America will only work for somebody who looks like me.
Right.
So this is democracy of the 21st century. So I'm posting a lot about it. I've got a tab for it on my Substack. If somebody wants to start following along, I just put down a concept plan, and so I'm gonna write a concept. I'm going to write a strategy, and then I'm going to write a plan.
Awesome. I love to hear that. As I keep seeing it, I'm gonna share it with the people in my community. That's great to hear. We need individuals like you with your mind out there doing the work that a lot of people aren't willing to do. So thank you for that.
Other than that, Substack's basically the best place to find me. However, you can find me on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a TikTok that I throw out some little short things, but those are always just me ranting.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we need some of that too. I very much appreciate you getting on this call with me, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Honestly, man, anytime you want, it's a blast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chuck. I'll let you go now. Have a great rest of your day, and looking forward to seeing what you're doing in the future.
Thank you, Chance.
All right. Thank you.